Hello again, welcome back. We're gonna do a video here on React and Redux, and we're gonna add Redux Thunk to handle asynchronous actions with Redux. So this is actually gonna be sort of a reprise of the weather app that we created, except this time we're gonna store the weather data in Redux. And this will show how to use Redux with web APIs, and it'll also be a review of Redux. I had a lot of questions about Redux, and people were still unsure how to use it, and understandable because there's a lot of moving parts there. So in the end, the app, maybe we'll add some more features to it, but in the end, the app will basically look like what I have here. And you can see I'm getting the weather from, Beverly Hills, right? Or what is it? I think that's, I guess that doesn't exist. Wait, let's 101. Yeah, I think that's New York, right? So it's 80 degrees in New York. Let's see, what is about San Francisco? 94010, 63 degrees in San Francisco. So you can see this is working and we're getting the weather, but in this case, we're actually doing it through a different mechanism than before. It's a little bit different. We've moved the state or the data that we're loading into a global application state managed by Redux rather than storing it in a component state variable, okay? So let's get started. I'm gonna go to my folder here and find a place where I can be working, and I'm gonna make a folder here. I'm going to put it in this class 13 folder here. And I'm going to get a new terminal. Actually, this is the terminal that I'm running right there. So I'm going to quit that one and, cd into this class 13 folder here. And the first thing we need to do is create a new React app. And so for the first part of this video, the first couple of steps, what we're going to do is just set up the application. So we're going to, create the basic React app. We're going to import our dependencies and then maybe set up a few things in the React project, okay? And then after that, we'll start adding components and building the actual functionality. So here we are. I'm in my folder here. I'm going to do npx create React app, and let's call this React Redux review. I don't think, did I use that name already? Let me just double check and see if I use that name here. Right, might as well just double check there. Oh yeah, I called it Redux review, so I'm going to call this one React Redux review, so that's okay. So we'll start by installing the app. And we'll just wait for this to install here, and it should be creating a new folder here. So I'm going to open up this folder in my code editor. And maybe this is my test project there. I'm going to close that one down, and we'll just start from scratch here. So before I do anything, I'm going to wait for all this stuff to load. Okay, almost done. Almost there. Any moment now. Okay, great. Okay, so let's cd to the React. Wait, cd React Redux review. There we go, right? So we'll cd into our folder, and let me clear the terminal there. Oh yeah, so the first step that we need to do here is we need to import our dependencies. So we're just going to use, since we're going to make a React and a Redux project, we'll need to import Redux, and we'll need to import React Redux, which is kind of the glue that connects Redux to your React application. So let's do that. So I'll do this with yarn. So I'm going to do yarn add, you can use npm too. Let's do Redux and React dash Redux, okay? And I'm going to add one more dependency here, okay? Let me kind of zoom in on this a little bit, right? So you can read that. And the other dependency I'm going to add is Redux Thunk. Yeah, Thunk is a thing, right? So I'm going to add Redux Thunk. So Redux Thunk is a tool that lets you make asynchronous actions, okay? You could actually get by without it, but it kind of makes it just a little bit easier to do asynchronous actions, okay? And we'll talk about this later. So here's our dependency. So we're going to yarn add, we're going to add, actually I'll just hit return and talk while this thing is running. So we're going to add Redux, React Redux, and Redux Thunk, okay? So we got all our dependencies, and now let's run our app. So we're going to do yarn start. Okay, and that should run our app and open it in the browser. This was like the old app there. I'm waiting for the new one to get started here. Okay, there we go, and there's our app running in the background there. So I'm going to go to the app here. And I'm just going to delete all the stuff here in app.js. So I found app.js in my source directory here, and I'm going to delete it. For some reason, like rendering this SVG graphic takes a lot of processing power, and then while I'm making the video, and that's going to, fan starts running on the computer. So I'm just going to delete this thing so that it's not doing that, right? And then since we're not using the logo, I'll delete the logo from the top here, right? So there's my app component. It's pretty simple, okay? So before we can actually get anything to work, we'll need to get Redux set up, okay? So to do that, I'm going to add a couple folders here. So first of all, in the source directory, I'm going to add an actions folder, okay? And inside the actions folder, I'll add an index.js, and we'll put our actions in here. And then I'm going to click on the source directory again and make a new directory called reducers, okay? And in the reducers directory, I'll make a new file called index.js, okay? And at the beginning, we'll just mock up our reducer, and it won't function yet, but we'll just put in the combined reducers here, just mock it up, okay? Just to get the app running, right? And then we'll get down to the real business. So far we've got our actions folder, we got our reducers folder, and oops, I misspelled reducers. Let's fix that. Reducers. There we go. And oh yeah, so next we'll need to set up the provider, right? So we've got actions and reducers, but now we need to create the store and then set up the provider, okay? So for this project, I'm gonna take it, you can put this in app and you can also put it in index.js as long as the provider is the top level component. So the idea is when Redux is running, the provider passes the application state down to all of the components that are, descendants of the provider. Okay, so they have to be underneath the provider in the app structure. Okay, so as long as I put it in here, I can wrap app in provider, and then everything inside app will inherit, or receive props from the provider. Okay, so let's go to the app here. Actually, before we do that, we got to do one last thing. So I have to have a reducer to return from my reducers here. So in index here, let's set up our root reducer. So I'll say import from, and we're going to get this from Redux. And then from Redux, we're going to get combine reducers. And then I'm going to set up my component here. So I'm going to say const about root reducer equals, and we're going to say combine reducers, and we're going to put in our just an empty object here, right? So let me actually get rid of that space there. So you can see here I've just got an empty object that I'm returning. Now we're going to add our reducers here and set the shape of our application state later. This is kind of just a mock-up right now, okay? So it'll actually, it won't throw an error, but it'll throw a warning in the console saying like, hey, your reducer doesn't have any properties on it, and it needs to have them. So we're going to add those later. So we'll come back to this, but let's export this as the default root reducer there, and now we can import it somewhere else. And so we kind of need this to create the store. So let's do that, and now let's go back to index.js. And in index.js, I'm going to import from Redux, and I'm going to get the create store method. Okay, so we'll use this to create the store object and initialize our app. And then I'm going to go get from React Redux, I'm going to go get the provider component. So provider is a component, so it's uppercase, so we'll spell it out as provider. And then let's go get our reducer. So let's get the root reducer here from reducers. So I'll say import root reducer from /reducers, and then this should give me the index file, right? So I got my root reducer here. So now we're all set up. So I got create store, provider, and root reducer. So we're going to use create store and the root reducer to make the reducer. So let's do that, or make the store, my mistake. So we'll say const store equals create store, and we'll put our root reducer here, okay? And then we'll set up the provider. So the provider is going to go in here. I'm going to wrap the app in provider. So we'll say provider, and provider has a store prop, and you pass the store in there. So we created a store here, and we're going to assign it to the provider. So the provider can provide the provider's job is to provide the store to all of its children, okay? So there we go. So that's pretty good. And you know, if I inspect my app here, you know, everything's working. I don't have any errors, though it's going to give me a warning here. It's going to say create store is defined but never used. Wait, I actually used create store there. Let me refresh this. Oh yeah, here's the one that I was looking for. Store does not have a valid reducer. Make sure the argument passed to combine reducers is an object whose values are reducers, right? So our object that we're passing to create or combine reducers is an empty object, right? So that's not a valid reducer. So we're going to actually add a reducer and put it in here in a little bit, right? But this is just getting us started, right? So this would be what you would do to set up a basic React app that used Redux. Okay, and you could stop here and then continue. Okay, you know, I mean, like this would be enough for you to create a Redux app. Okay, if we want to use asynchronous actions with our Redux projects, we need to add one more thing. Okay, and that's the Redux Thunk, and we're going to add that as middleware to our when we create the store. So under Redux right here, I'm going to add one more. So for asynchronous projects, you'll want to do this step also, okay? So I'm going to go here and add Apply Middleware, okay? So I imported Apply Middleware, and then over here, as the second argument to the root reducer, I'm going to call Apply Middleware, and I'll have to call it with the middleware that I want to use, okay? So the middleware that I want to use is going to be Redux Thunk. So I'm going to add another import here at the top, and I'm going to get this one from Redux Thunk, and we're going to import Redux, no, I think it's the root one. It's like Redux Thunk like this, right? So I'm just going to import Redux Thunk and then apply it as middleware there, okay? And then we should be seeing like the same error here. We don't have a valid reducer, but that's okay. So we should be set up now to go through and continue with any project you were going to create. So I'll stop the video here because this could be a good resource for anybody that was starting a brand new React project. If you were using Redux and maybe Redux Thunk, this would be the setup that you would use, right? And then from here, you would create your actions, you would create your reducers, you'd add any reducers you were going to use, you'd put them in here, and then you could build your components and continue with your app. Okay, so thanks for watching, and then we'll continue this app in the next video. Okay, and as always, have a great day.